Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be giving you an update on the storms that are going to be taking place in the northern plains. We now have a huge area of enhanced risk, and we might even be upgraded to a moderate risk in some areas, and that spans all through the Dakotas and Nebraska. So they greatly expanded that enhanced and the slight risk. We're going to be timing these storms out for you guys and just generally giving you all the information you need to know about these storms so that you can plan out your day for later tonight and into early tomorrow morning. So this is what the current National Weather Service page looks like. As you can see, we have some frost advisories and freeze warnings in through parts of Nevada and California. We have winter weather advisories in parts of Idaho and Montana, with some heat advisories in that orange color for the northern plains and also the southern plains. And we even have a few excessive heat warnings in effect for parts of southeastern Minnesota, right in and around Minneapolis. We have a few more excessive heat warnings in southern Arizona, and then we have a bigger area of excessive heat watches in that dark red for western Arizona, southern Nevada, and southeastern California. We have red flag warnings in that pink color for parts of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and a little bit of Montana and South Dakota as well. We have flood watches in effect for parts of the southeastern United States and also into the mid-Atlantic as well. And other than that, we don't have many other watches or warnings currently in place. Yesterday we had a high temperature in Rio Grande Village, Texas, where they got up to 114 degrees Fahrenheit, with a low temperature 20 miles east-southeast of Old Station, California, where they got down to 23 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest rainfall report was also in Richland Township, Arkansas, the second day in the row that it was in that same area. In southeastern Arkansas, northwestern and west central Mississippi, those areas got hit with 6 or more inches of rainfall. And in this case, we had a rainfall report that got almost up to 10 inches, 9.97 inches reported there in southeastern Arkansas. So that's a ton of rainfall. And even some of the surrounding reports, even if you think that that's just one of the higher numbers, might have been an inaccurate report. When I looked through the list, there were a ton of reports that were at 6, 7, 8 inches. So this is definitely not some sort of just fluke type of report where somebody put in a false report. It looks like it's probably verifiable because of how many similar reports there were within that same area. So we had a ton of flooding in the southern plains and the southeast, but we're going to hopefully see some of that go away, and it should turn a little bit drier over the next few days and weeks in that area. Here's what the current Storm Prediction Center page looks like, and you can see we have a huge area of enhanced risk, and they really upgraded this area. Yesterday we had that area mainly just within here, so it was a fairly small area in the western Dakotas and eastern Montana. Now it covers much of the Dakotas, northern Nebraska, and now into a little bit of eastern Montana as well. We have that slight risk surrounding it. The green area, which is that marginal risk, also surrounds there, and it also we also have a marginal risk into northern Wisconsin, a little bit of Minnesota, and the UP of Michigan. And that's all for today. If we look at the individual risks, looking at the tornadoes, for example, we have a 5% chance of tornadoes, and even though that doesn't sound like a lot, it is still a fairly decent risk. I believe we had a 2% chance just about 2 days ago, and we had actually some tornadoes in parts of South Dakota. So they only put up a 2% chance just a couple days ago, and we already had a couple tornadoes again in parts of South Dakota. They might have even had a couple more reported that I didn't see. So even when they have what looks like low risks in the green and the brown shades, you still want to pay attention because anything is still possible, and we have seen fairly large outbreaks of tornadoes even in just that 5 or 10% risk area. So in this case, we only have that 5% risk up, but again, that doesn't mean that we're not going to see maybe a couple tornadoes today. That is definitely still a possibility here. If we look at the hail outlook, you can see that we have a 30% chance, and this is why they upgraded this to an enhanced risk over much wider of an area. It's because they upped the hail and the wind risk. We have a 30% chance now in that red through parts of Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and Montana. And then we have in that black hatched region, that's where we have the chances of seeing 2-inch diameter hail or greater. So we could have some rather large hailstones in these areas, and that's definitely a concern because it could cause some damage, especially to vehicles that aren't covered or under some sort of cover so that they can be covered away from all of that hail. So, if you have anything that you need to kind of protect from the hail, make sure you're getting it somewhere where it's not going to be hit by all these hailstones as these storms roll on through. If we look at the wind outlook, you can see that we have a broad area of 30% chance or higher through parts of Nebraska, South Dakota, and North Dakota, with a larger area of a significant hatch region, which covers parts of northern Nebraska, parts of South Dakota, and also into western North Dakota. So that's the area where we could be seeing wind gusts above 65 knots, which is around 70 to 75 miles per hour, and then if we move this on and we start looking at the simulated radar, you're going to start to see that we're going to have a few storms develop. It's going to be one big line which kind of stretches from North Dakota all the way into Nebraska. And then as it heads into Nebraska, it's going to have kind of a hook on the bottom. I do think that, especially within this area on the hook on the bottom right in here, this is the area that I think is going to be impacted with probably it's going to be one of the epicenters of of these storms, because we're going to have the highest Cape values, the highest dew points, the highest temperatures, all within probably right within this area, northern and central Nebraska. So within that area, we could have a little bit of a hook of heavier precipitation, heavier rainfall, heavier hailstone, and stronger gusts. So we could be dealing with probably the worst of the conditions somewhere within Nebraska or southern South Dakota, and you're going to see why in just a couple of moments. So moving through this evening, this would be around 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Central Time. We have a few storms into North Dakota and South Dakota, as well as a little bit of Montana, but again, they aren't anything that's going to be too major, and it just looks like a few scattered storms at this point. They start to form somewhat of a line as we're heading to around 9 p.m. Mountain Time or 10 p.m. Central Time, and you can see that we have those storms into the western Dakotas, now starting to head into western Nebraska a little bit more. Now it's starting to form a more robust line of storms, and you can see what I was talking about with that little hook on the bottom. So it is a fairly straight line all the way through the Dakotas, and then as soon as it hits that Nebraska border, it kind of makes a little bit of a curve right there, and that's where I think we could be dealing with the worst of the severe weather, right in this hook in here. So this is where I think probably the worst of the severe weather will be. If you're looking for rainfall, your best shot is actually going to be up here into parts of western North Dakota and eastern Montana, which luckily is some of the same areas that are dealing with fairly severe drought issues. So you guys could get 2 to 3 inches of rainfall, luckily. And other than that, the main threat, I think, is going to be wind and hail. Those are the two main factors with this event. And it doesn't look like flash flooding is really going to be an issue with this, mainly because of how dry the soil is. So really there isn't any kind of abundance of rain in the soil already. It's very, very dry in these areas. So any rainfall will definitely help. It'll definitely help because we haven't seen much rainfall over the past few weeks in many of these areas. If we go into the early morning hours tomorrow morning, you can see that we have that strong area of severe thunderstorms still in parts of Nebraska, so it's holding intact over many of these areas. We still have a fairly robust area of storms into eastern South Dakota, and then it's mostly just a steady rainfall into North Dakota and Montana, because it will be colder in those areas. So we're gonna have temperatures that are the actual temperatures at the time will be into the 60s and the 70s, as opposed to the 80s, which are going to be felt further to the south. So it won't be as warm in North Dakota and Montana, meaning that you're not going to have as robust and as unstable of an atmosphere as you will see in South Dakota and Nebraska. So it will be mostly just a plain rain if you live in North Dakota or Montana, which is actually fairly good, because the main issue in that area is not the need for severe weather, it's the need for rainfall. So getting it in a steady dose is definitely a good thing. And then you can see that storm system moves out further to the south and east, but it is still fairly severe on the southern end of this, where that line, which was moving through Nebraska, is still holding intact as it's moving into southwestern Iowa, and that's going to continue into Missouri and northeastern Kansas potentially. I believe we have a marginal risk in that area for tomorrow. You can see it does start to break up by that point. We're not dealing with anything much more after that. So over the next 2.5 days, but most of this rain is going to be coming within the next 12 to 24 hours. You can see that we have rainfall totals, especially in western and northern North Dakota, that are expected to get above an inch, maybe even up near 2.5 inches if you live right along the Canadian border. If you live in Nebraska, you also have a decent shot of getting some rainfall. You're getting about 3/4 of an inch to about an inch if you live in eastern or northern Nebraska. And then if you live in the southwestern part of the state, mostly just up to about 3/10 of an inch. In South Dakota and also southern North Dakota, we're dealing with mainly about 0.3 to maybe up to 0.8 or 0.9 inches of rainfall, maybe even up to near an inch and a quarter. So we could have some isolated pockets of heavier rainfall. And then back through Wisconsin, we have some heavier amounts of rainfall, even getting up near 3 inches or even up to 4 inches in a few of those spots. So heavier rainfall in through areas like Wisconsin. But again, the main area that needs the rainfall for drought reasons is going to be further to the west into the northern plains. If you look at the CAPE numbers, this is a way of measuring the amount of energy in the atmosphere, and you can tell why the strongest storms are going to be in Nebraska, because you can see the most elevated CAPE values up near 4 to 5,000, which is very high for this region. Is located in central Nebraska. So that's the area where we're going to be dealing with most likely the strongest storms. Up further to the north, it is still a rather high amount of instability and also energy. We have CAPE values that are between 2,000 and about 3,500. So that is still rather high, and that could definitely cause a few storms within those areas. If we look at the high temperatures, these are going to be really high over pretty much this entire area. Now, this is the high temperature, so these are happening right around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, when the storms are actually going to be happening around 8 or 9 o'clock local time in the evening. So this is not at the time of the storms. This is just the daytime heating that will help these storms and that the storms will feed off of. So at the time of the actual severe weather, it will probably be in the 80s. You're probably not going to be dealing with rain into the 90s. You're probably going to be a little bit lower, and probably into the upper or mid 80s, but still it will be very, very warm, and the storms are only going to feed off of that. So you can see daytime high temperatures expected to be for today into the mid and upper 90s in many of these areas, even a few triple digit numbers near Montana, and also further to the south into Colorado and Kansas. So really, really warm temperatures in many of these areas. If you look at the dew points, these are going to be also very high. We have dew points that are getting up into the upper and the upper and even mid 60s, and even into the low 70s in a few of these areas, especially to the south into areas like Nebraska and southern South Dakota, where we have that highest chance of severe weather and the highest probability of seeing the worst of these storms. And you can see why. We have those dew points that are getting up into the 70s, as opposed to areas in the Dakotas and Montana that have those dew points still getting rather high, definitely enough to cause a few storms, but only into the mid and upper 60s as opposed to the low and mid 70s. So that's definitely a drastic shift in terms of the dew points. And if we look at the amount of precipitable water, this is showing you how much total liquid is in the atmosphere at any one given point in time. And you can see that we have values that are around 1.5 to 2 inches in some of these areas. Throughout the entire northern plains region, that is definitely enough to support a few thunderstorms. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.